Hey Fearless Gamers, the wild card from Fearless Games here, and I want to talk about two tools that are important. Well, one tool is very important for doing this hobby, and the other tool can be very helpful. So, firstly, let's get right to it. The first tool is the cutting mat you see behind or underneath this tool right here. Cutting mats are invaluable to have. In fact, it should be one of the first things you pick up, tool-wise, outside of glue and brushes, for example, and paints, I guess. If you can consider paints a tool, I suppose. But once you get the essentials for actually assembling the models out of the way, this should be right there with it because this is going to be your working surface primarily. Um, when you're assembling models, cutting them up for conversions, doing whatever you're doing, cutting out anything or drilling anything, do it over a cutting mat. It protects the surface you're working on, and because of that, it's very valuable. You won't have to worry about slipping and cutting into the table and scratching it up. You won't get your parents mad at you if you're a kid, let's say, and you're doing that with your hobby. You want to enjoy your hobby, and you want people who are part of your life to not be annoyed by your hobby. So, very nice thing to have is the cutting mat. They come in different sizes, shapes, even colors. They usually are gridded out to give you some type of help for like size and everything that way. And that's the cutting mat. So I recommend getting them. They're not that expensive and they're very useful. So, with that being said, let's look at the primary tool I want to talk about, which is the compass cutter. This one's from X-Acto. Um, the compass cutter works just like a compass. If you've utilized a compass for like math, not a compass for direction, but I guess a math compass, it has a little point here and then it has a pencil. Well, in the place of the pencil, this one has a blade. So, with that being said, um, get your parents' permission and parents' supervision if you need it for buying or using this tool if you're a kid. You don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to get your parents mad at you for buying something which has basically a needle point and a blade on it, both of which will cut you. So you do have to be careful and always use common sense regardless of your age. Just because you're of age doesn't mean you can disregard common sense. So, with that being said, the compass cutter is for cutting circles. If you play a game with a circle base, for example 40K, or if you're collecting models that have circle bases, it can be invaluable for getting a nice circle cut the size of your base for using basing materials. In this case, it's textured plastic card, texture like deck plating, as you can kind of see right there. And that's helpful for getting a nice clean circle cut so it looks like it belongs on the base and it's not just a valiant attempt at making a nice circle cut. But beyond basing, you can utilize the circle cutouts for models. If you're doing some type of conversion or scratch building, you may need a nice circle. You can also utilize it for cutting for the actual circle cutouts itself, like for the base here or for putting it on a vehicle. But if you're not using the circle cutouts, the actual circle you cut itself in the material, like let's say a piece of cardstock, plastic card, or like a folder, let's say like a manila folder, um, that can be a nice circle template for painting circles, whether it's a solid circle or the outline of a circle on a model. It also can be done on plastic card itself. If you're trying to make a circle porthole, let's say for a ship or something, the compass cutter can be very helpful that way for making the windows you need. So it has a few uses outside of just being for basing. I use it pretty much just for basing at the moment. And also, this one comes with extra blades, which is nice in case this one does dull out. So how do you utilize this thing? Well, this blue part here is slidable. You would loosen it here and slide it up and down. You would hold on to this as your anchorage point and you press that in firmly to the surface you're cutting. Then you angle down the blade until it's touching the surface you want to cut. And you don't want it to hop on you. You want to keep the blue part. You don't want it to do one of these. You want it to always be spinning like this, not spinning on the blade, but spinning on the blue point. And then you just do a slow circle around. Slow circle around the cut. In this case, you can see by the angle of the blade, you should really only cut it in one direction. So you want to do a slow circle around, And you don't want to put too much pressure on the blade itself. It's better to do multiple passes, multiple circles, with lighter pressure than 1 or 2 passes with heavy pressure, because the more pressure you put on the blade, the better chance you have of this part skipping out. So just keep spinning it with light pressure. You'll cut through it, no problem. It's going to stay in its groove, and you'll get a nice clean circle. Practice first. Use some paper or whatever it is to practice to get a good feel for how the compass cutter works if you don't have much experience with it. Then, once you feel confident, you can move on to your plastic card or whatever it is you're cutting, cardstock, whatever, and you'll be able to cut out in pretty rapid succession a bunch of circles. So if you're utilizing the cutout itself, you can get like 10 cut out in just a couple of minutes. Really, it's a very quick and efficient way to make bases that way. Or if you're cutting out different circle templates, you can do it in pretty rapid succession. Or if you're making windows for scratch building, again, do it in pretty rapid succession. Now, the pin is going to pretty much pierce what you're cutting. So if you're utilizing the circle cutout itself, you're going to have a slight little pinhole in it. Not very noticeable, in all honesty, but if you're using a smooth piece of plastic card, you want a smooth surface, it may be noticeable even after painting. So there are a couple ways you can touch it up with like a gap filler, liquid green stuff could do it. You just have to play around with it that way. I have seen it's not as easy to find, but I have seen compass cutters with a boot that goes over the needle, and it gives you like a little circle that goes over that has like a, I don't know what type of pad is on it, but it gives you friction and you just push down on that, and it's like having a needle, only it's a little bit bigger of a surface area, so you can't get as tight a circle necessarily. You can still probably get this tight of a circle, but anything tighter than that might be a little bit difficult depending on the boot size that the compass cutter is using, but it won't mar the surface. It won't have a little needle hole in the surface at all. So if that sounds attractive to you, you may want to check that out. And that's pretty much it for the compass cutter. They're not that expensive. They're, I would say, $10 or so, and they're a pretty worthwhile investment if you need circle cutouts. As you can see, I marked it here on the compass cutter. This is because I use it primarily for 25mm bases, so I marked it. Once I start cutting 40mm bases, I'll experiment, find the size I need, and then mark it off as well. So if you're going to be doing certain sizes a lot, mark it off on the event that this gets undone. If it gets loose by accident and slides or something happens, you don't want to spend another 10 minutes or so fine-tuning it to get to where you want it. Fine-tune it once, mark it, and you're good. And that's it, Fearless Gamers. That's the cutting mat and the compass cutter. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section here. We love to read them. Or you could PM us at Fearless Games, and we'll get back to you as quick and as best we can. And if you have a question for one of us specifically, just utilize our name, and that'll help us be directed to it if we don't see it first. If somebody else sees it first, they'll let us know. And that's it. So any question, comments, suggestions, we'd love to hear from you guys. And until next time, Fearless Gamers, take it easy.